When I first received the coordinates, I could hardly believe my eyes. An ancient map, passed down through generations, had led me to what appeared to be the location of a lost city deep in the Amazon rainforest. As an explorer and archaeologist, this was the opportunity of a lifetime. I assembled a team of experts, packed our gear, and set off on an expedition that promised to uncover a civilization long forgotten by time. The map had come to me through a series of fortunate connections. A colleague of mine, Dr. Emily Parker, had inherited it from her grandfather, who had been an explorer in the early 20th century. He had never been able to follow the map to its conclusion, but his notes hinted at something extraordinary hidden in the dense jungle. When Emily showed me the map, I was immediately captivated. "Are you sure about this?" Emily asked, her eyes filled with both excitement and concern. "This could be dangerous." "I know," I replied, unable to contain my enthusiasm. "But think about what we could discover. A lost city, untouched for centuries. It's worth the risk." With Emily's blessing and her agreement to join the expedition, we began assembling our team. We needed experts in various fields to ensure the success of our mission. We brought on Dr. Michael Thompson, a renowned archaeologist with a deep knowledge of ancient civilizations, and Sarah Mitchell, a skilled cartographer and survivalist who had navigated some of the world's most challenging terrains. Rounding out our team was David Harris, a tech specialist responsible for our equipment and communications. As we prepared for the journey, the excitement was palpable. We spent weeks gathering supplies, studying the map, and planning our route. The map itself was a work of art, with detailed illustrations and annotations that hinted at the treasures that awaited us. It was hard not to get carried away by the possibilities. Finally, the day arrived. We boarded a small plane that would take us to the edge of the Amazon rainforest. From there, we would travel by boat and on foot to reach the coordinates marked on the map. As the plane soared over the vast expanse of green, I couldn't help but feel a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. "Look at that," Michael said, pointing out the window. "Miles and miles of untouched wilderness. It's incredible." "It is," I agreed, my heart pounding with anticipation. "And somewhere down there is our lost city." We landed in a small village at the edge of the rainforest, where we met our local guide, Carlos. He was a seasoned explorer with an intimate knowledge of the jungle, and his expertise would be invaluable on our journey. "Welcome," Carlos greeted us with a warm smile. "I hear you are looking for a lost city. The jungle holds many secrets, but it does not give them up easily." "We're ready for the challenge," Sarah replied confidently. "Lead the way." With Carlos guiding us, we set off into the jungle. The first few days were grueling, as we hacked our way through dense foliage and navigated treacherous terrain. The heat and humidity were oppressive, and the constant buzz of insects was a relentless reminder of the jungle's untamed nature. Despite the hardships, our spirits remained high. Each step brought us closer to our goal, and the promise of discovery kept us motivated. As we journeyed deeper into the rainforest, we encountered signs that we were on the right track. Ancient stone markers, overgrown with vines, hinted at a forgotten path leading to the lost city. "These stones are incredible," Emily remarked, examining one of the markers. "They must be centuries old." "They are," Michael agreed, "and they suggest that we're getting closer." The map indicates that the city should be just a few days' journey from here. As we pressed on, the jungle seemed to grow thicker and more impenetrable. It was as if it was trying to protect the secrets hidden within. But we were determined, and nothing could deter us from our quest. One evening, as we set up camp, Carlos shared stories of the local tribes and their legends about the lost city. "They say it was a place of great power," he told us, his voice low and serious. "But it was cursed by the gods. Those who enter never return." "Do you believe in the curse?" David asked, his curiosity piqued. Carlos shrugged. "I have seen many strange things in the jungle. It is wise to respect the old stories, but we must also seek the truth." His words lingered in my mind as I lay in my hammock that night, staring up at the canopy of stars. The jungle was alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, a symphony of life that seemed to pulse with an ancient rhythm. I couldn't help but wonder what we would find when we reached the lost city, and whether the legends of its curse were true. The journey ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but the promise of discovery was too great to ignore. We were on the brink of uncovering a piece of history that had been hidden for centuries, and nothing could stop us now. Our journey was arduous, battling through dense jungle and treacherous terrain. The deeper we ventured, the more isolated we became from the modern world. The local tribes we encountered spoke of the city in hushed tones, referring to it as a place of great power and danger. Their warnings were clear. The city was cursed, and those who entered never returned. Despite their ominous tales, our determination to uncover the truth drove us forward. The first few days were a test of endurance and willpower. The Amazon rainforest was unlike any environment we had ever experienced. The heat was stifling, and the humidity clung to our skin like a second layer. Every step was a struggle through thick underbrush, and the air was filled with the constant buzz of insects. Our guide, Carlos, led the way with an almost supernatural sense of direction, his machete slicing through the dense foliage with practiced ease. "Keep an eye out for any unusual plants or animals," Carlos advised as we trudged along a narrow path. "The jungle is full of surprises, and not all of them are friendly." Sarah, our survivalist and cartographer, was in her element. She moved with a grace and confidence that belied the challenging conditions. "This place is incredible," she said, her eyes scanning the surroundings. "It's like stepping back in time." Emily, our archaeologist, was equally captivated. "Everywhere you look, there's evidence of ancient civilizations," she marveled. "We could spend a lifetime here and still only scratch the surface." Despite the hardships, our spirits remained high. The promise of discovering a lost city kept us motivated, and the camaraderie among the team was strong. We shared stories and laughter around the campfire each night, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the surrounding trees. One evening, as we gathered for dinner, Carlos shared more about the local tribes and their legends. "The people here have lived in harmony with the jungle for generations," he explained. "They know its secrets and its dangers. The lost city you seek is known to them, but they fear it." "Why do they fear it?" David asked, his curiosity evident. "Is it really cursed?" Carlos nodded. "The legends speak of a great civilization that angered the gods. The city was cursed, and its people were doomed to suffer. Those who enter the city are said to be consumed by the curse, never to return." His words sent a shiver down my spine. The idea of a cursed city seemed far-fetched, but the conviction in Carlos's voice was unsettling. "Do you believe in the curse?" I asked. Carlos shrugged. "I have seen many strange things in the jungle. It is wise to respect the old stories, but we must also seek the truth." As we pressed on, the jungle seemed to grow thicker and more impenetrable. It was as if it was trying to protect the secrets hidden within. We encountered numerous obstacles: swollen rivers that had to be crossed with makeshift rafts, steep cliffs that required careful navigation, and swarms of insects that seemed determined to make our journey as uncomfortable as possible. One particularly challenging day, we came across a massive fallen tree blocking our path. "We'll have to go around," Carlos said, scanning the dense underbrush for an alternative route. "How long will that take?" Emily asked, wiping sweat from her brow. "Hard to say," Carlos replied. "Could be a few hours, could be a day. The jungle is unpredictable." We set off in search of a way around the obstacle, our progress slow and laborious. As we hacked our way through the underbrush, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of isolation. The further we ventured, the more cut off we became from the outside world. It was both exhilarating and daunting. "Are we sure we're on the right track?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with concern. "This map is old, and the jungle changes over time." "We're close," Carlos assured her. "The markers we've seen so far match the map. We just need to keep going." As night fell, we set up camp in a small clearing. The sounds of the jungle were a constant backdrop, a symphony of life that never seemed to rest. We took turns keeping watch, aware that we were not the only predators in the rainforest. During my watch, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The darkness seemed to press in from all sides, and every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig set my nerves on edge. The local tribe's warnings about the curse echoed in my mind, and I found myself questioning our mission for the first time. "Everything okay?" David asked, joining me by the fire. "Yeah," I replied, trying to sound confident. "Just this place gets to you after a while." He nodded. "I know what you mean, but we've come this far. We can't turn back now." His words were a reminder of why we were here. The lost city, with all its mysteries and potential discoveries, awaited us. We had faced countless challenges to get this far, and we couldn't let fear or doubt stop us now. As dawn broke, we packed up and continued our journey. The jungle, with all its dangers and difficulties, was a formidable adversary, but we were determined to see our mission through. The lost city was out there, and we were getting closer with each passing day. After weeks of relentless trekking, we finally reached the outskirts of the lost city. The ruins were breathtaking, a testament to an advanced civilization that had thrived centuries ago. However, it wasn't long before we noticed strange occurrences. Equipment malfunctioned, and some team members reported feeling an eerie presence watching them. At night, we heard whispers and saw shadows flitting between the ancient stone structures. We tried to rationalize these experiences, attributing them to exhaustion and the oppressive jungle environment. The moment we stepped into the ruins, there was an undeniable shift in the atmosphere. The air felt heavier, charged with a palpable tension. The city, though overgrown with vines and partially reclaimed by the jungle, still held a grandeur that spoke of its former glory. Towering stone structures, intricately carved with symbols and figures, loomed over us, casting long shadows in the fading light. "This is incredible," Emily said, her voice filled with awe as she surveyed the ruins. "I've never seen anything like it." Michael nodded, his eyes wide with wonder. The architecture, the carvings, this was a highly advanced civilization. "We need to document everything." We set up camp at the edge of the city, eager to begin our exploration. As we unpacked our equipment, David noticed the first sign of trouble. "Hey, my GPS isn't working," he said, frowning at the device. "It's just showing static." "Mine too," Sarah added, holding up her own malfunctioning GPS. "It was working fine this morning." Carlos, ever pragmatic, suggested a possible explanation. "The jungle can interfere with signals. It happens sometimes." We accepted his explanation, but the malfunctioning equipment was only the beginning. As we ventured deeper into the city, other devices began to fail. Cameras refused to focus, batteries drained inexplicably, and our communication radios produced nothing but static. "There's something strange going on here," I said, trying to make sense of it all. "It's like the city itself is interfering with our equipment. Maybe it's some kind of electromagnetic field," David speculated, "or something in the stones." Despite the technical difficulties, we pressed on, driven by the desire to uncover the secrets of the lost city. We spent our days exploring the ruins, carefully documenting the carvings and artifacts we found. The city was a treasure trove of history, each discovery more fascinating than the last. But as the days turned into nights, the sense of unease grew stronger. It started with small things, a fleeting shadow, a whisper carried on the wind. At first, we dismissed them as tricks of the mind, the result of fatigue and the oppressive jungle environment. But the occurrences became more frequent and harder to ignore. One night, as we sat around the campfire, Sarah spoke up. "Has anyone else felt like they're being watched?" There was a moment of silence as we exchanged uneasy glances. "I have," Emily admitted. "And I've heard whispers, like someone is just out of earshot." Carlos, usually the voice of reason, looked troubled. "The locals believe this place is cursed. Maybe there's some truth to their stories." "Come on, Carlos," David said, trying to lighten the mood. "You're not seriously buying into that, are you?" Carlos shrugged. "I've been in the jungle long enough to know that there are things we can't explain. It's wise to be cautious." That night, as I lay in my hammock, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The jungle was alive with sounds, the chirping of insects, the distant call of nocturnal animals. But there was something else, something just beyond the edge of perception. I closed my eyes, trying to will myself to sleep, but the whispers seemed to grow louder, filling my mind with a sense of dread. The next morning, We discovered that some of our equipment had been tampered with. Cables were frayed, and several items were missing. "This doesn't make any sense," Michael said, inspecting the damage. "Who would do this?" "Maybe it's animals," Sarah suggested, though she didn't sound convinced. "Or someone trying to scare us off," Carlos added. "We need to be vigilant." As we continued our work, the strange occurrences persisted. Team members reported seeing figures moving among the ruins, only to find nothing when they investigated. Shadows seemed to dance at the edge of our vision, and the whispers grew more insistent, like a chorus of voices just out of reach. One afternoon, while exploring a particularly well-preserved temple, Emily and I heard what sounded like chanting. We followed the sound, our footsteps echoing off the stone walls. The chanting grew louder, more distinct, until we reached a chamber at the heart of the temple. The room was filled with carvings depicting rituals and sacrifices, and in the center stood an altar. The chanting ceased abruptly as we entered, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. "Did you hear that?" Emily whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "I did," I replied, my heart pounding. "But there's no one here." We quickly documented the chamber and returned to camp, our minds racing with questions. The sense of unease had become a constant companion, and it was clear that we were not alone in the city. As night fell, the whispers returned, more insistent than ever. It was as if the city itself was trying to communicate with us, to warn us of something. We huddled around the campfire, our nerves frayed, and discussed our next steps. "We need to figure out what's going on here," Michael said, his voice steady but tense. "There's something in this city, something we don't understand." "Agreed," I said, "but we need to be careful. Whatever it is, it's not friendly." The first signs of trouble had shaken our resolve, but we were determined to uncover the truth. The lost city held its secrets close, and we were only beginning to scratch the surface. Little did we know, the real danger was yet to come. As we delved deeper into the city, we uncovered artifacts and inscriptions that hinted at a dark history. The city had once been a place of immense power, but its inhabitants had angered their gods, bringing a curse upon themselves. The more we discovered, the more the curse seemed to manifest. One by one, members of our team fell ill with inexplicable symptoms. Some were plagued by nightmares, while others became paranoid and aggressive. It was as if the city itself was trying to drive us away. Our days were filled with exploration and discovery. Each new artifact we found added another piece to the puzzle of the lost city's history. We uncovered beautifully crafted pottery, intricately carved statues, and ancient tools that spoke of a highly advanced civilization. But alongside these treasures, we found inscriptions that told a darker tale. "Look at this," Emily said one afternoon, pointing to a series of carvings on the wall of a temple. "These symbols depict a great calamity. It looks like the city was struck by some kind of disaster." Michael examined the carvings closely. It seems to suggest that the city's leaders angered their gods. There's a lot of imagery related to punishment and suffering. As we translated more of the inscriptions, a disturbing story began to emerge. The city had been a place of great power and prosperity, but its people had become arrogant and defied their gods. In response, the gods had cursed the city, condemning its inhabitants to a fate worse than death. The curse was said to bring madness, illness, and death to all who entered the city. "It's like something out of a horror story," Sarah said, her voice tinged with unease. "Do you think there's any truth to it?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but we need to be careful. Whatever happened here, it was serious enough to leave a lasting impression on the people who lived here." As we continued our work, the curse seemed to come to life around us. It started with small things. David, usually the most level-headed among us, began to complain of headaches and nausea. He brushed it off as exhaustion, but his symptoms grew worse with each passing day. Then Sarah started having nightmares. She would wake up in the middle of the night, screaming and drenched in sweat, unable to remember what had terrified her so. "I'm fine," she insisted, though her pale face and trembling hands told a different story. "It's just the stress. I'll be okay." But it wasn't just Sarah and David. One by one, other members of our team began to exhibit strange behaviors. Emily, usually calm and collected, became increasingly paranoid, convinced that someone, or something, was watching her. Michael, always the voice of reason, started to lose his temper over minor issues, snapping at the rest of us for no apparent reason. "It's this place," Carlos said one evening as we gathered around the campfire. "The curse is real. We need to leave before it's too late." "We can't just abandon the expedition," Michael argued. "We've made too many important discoveries. We need to see this through." "But at what cost?" I asked, my voice shaking with fear and frustration. "We're falling apart. If we stay here, we might not make it out alive." Despite our growing fears, we pressed on, driven by a mixture of determination and desperation. The city seemed to resist our presence, its ancient walls closing in around us. The whispers grew louder, and the shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. It was as if the very air was charged with malevolence, a tangible force that sought to drive us away. One afternoon, while exploring a particularly remote part of the city, we stumbled upon a hidden chamber. The air inside was thick and musty, and the walls were covered in inscriptions that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. "These inscriptions are different," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They speak of a ritual, a way to lift the curse." "Do you think it could work?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide with hope and fear. "I don't know," Emily replied, "but it's worth a try. We need to do something before it's too late." As we studied the inscriptions, we realized that the ritual was complex and dangerous. It required a series of precise actions, and any mistake could be catastrophic. But it was our only hope of breaking the curse and escaping the city's grasp. "We have to try," I said, my voice filled with determination. "We can't let this place destroy us." The decision was made. We would attempt the ritual the next day, hoping against hope that it would lift the curse and allow us to leave the city unharmed. But as night fell, the sense of dread grew stronger. The whispers became a chorus, filling our minds with fear and doubt. The shadows seemed to close in, and the air grew cold and oppressive. I lay in my hammock, unable to sleep, my mind racing with thoughts of the ritual and the dark history of the city. The curse had already taken a toll on us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running out of time. The city, with its ancient secrets and malevolent force, seemed determined to keep us within its grasp. As dawn broke, we gathered our equipment and made our way to the hidden chamber. The air was thick with tension, and every step felt like a march towards an uncertain fate. We had come to the lost city in search of knowledge and discovery, but we had found something far more dangerous. The curse had been unleashed, and we were about to face it head-on. Our situation grew dire as the curse tightened its grip. Supplies dwindled, and the once cohesive team began to fracture. Trust eroded, and fear took hold. Desperation led to reckless decisions, and we found ourselves trapped in a nightmare of our own making. The jungle, once a place of adventure, now felt like a prison. The ancient city's malevolent force seemed to feed on our fear, growing stronger with each passing day. The morning after we discovered the hidden chamber and the ritual, we awoke to a scene of chaos. Sarah, who had been keeping watch, was nowhere to be found. Her tent was empty, her gear scattered haphazardly around the campsite. "Sarah," I called out, my voice echoing through the ruins. "Sarah, where are you?" The others quickly joined the search, their faces etched with worry. We combed through the surrounding area, calling her name, but there was no sign of her. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. "She wouldn't just leave," Emily said, her voice trembling. "Something must have happened to her. Maybe she went to explore on her own," Michael suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. "We need to stay calm and think this through." But staying calm was easier said than done. The disappearance of a team member was a blow to our already fragile morale. The sense of dread that had been building for days now hung over us like a dark cloud. As the hours passed with no sign of Sarah, our fear turned to desperation. We decided to split into smaller groups to cover more ground. Emily and I took the eastern part of the city, while Michael and David headed west. Carlos stayed at the camp, maintaining a central point of communication in case Sarah returned. "Be careful," Carlos warned as we set out. "This place is dangerous, and we can't afford to lose anyone else." Emily and I moved through the ruins, our senses on high alert. Every rustle of leaves, every distant sound set our nerves on edge. The city, once a place of wonder, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. "Do you think the curse is real?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," I admitted, "but something is definitely wrong here. We need to find Sarah and get out of this place." As we searched, we came across more signs of the city's dark history. In one chamber, we found a series of carvings depicting scenes of torment and suffering. The figures in the carvings seemed to writhe in agony, their faces twisted in expressions of pain and fear. "This is horrifying," Emily said, her eyes wide with shock. "What kind of civilization would create something like this?" "One that was desperate," I replied. "Desperate to appease their gods in a moment of clarity." I stumbled upon an ancient temple at the heart of the city. Inside, I discovered a series of carvings that told the story of the curse and how it could be lifted. The solution lay in a ritual that required great sacrifice and courage. With time running out and the lives of my team hanging in the balance, I knew we had no choice but to attempt the ritual. It was our only hope of breaking the curse and escaping the city's grasp. The days had blurred into a haze of fear and desperation. Our supplies were nearly exhausted, and the jungle's oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on us. Each step felt like a struggle, and the whispers that had once seemed distant now echoed constantly in our minds. Our team was on the brink of collapse, and hope was a fragile, fleeting thing. One afternoon, as I wandered through the ruins in a daze, I found myself standing before an ancient temple. Its facade was adorned with intricate carvings, and despite the overgrowth of vines and moss, it exuded an aura of significance. Drawn by a force I couldn't explain, I stepped inside. The air inside the temple was cool and still, a stark contrast to the sweltering heat outside. The walls were covered in carvings, each one more detailed and elaborate than the last. As I moved deeper into the temple, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me, as if the malevolent force that had plagued us was held at bay within these walls. "Guys, you need to see this," I called out, my voice echoing through the temple. One by one, the others joined me. Emily, Michael, Sarah, David, and Carlos stood in awe as they took in the carvings. The images told a story, one that seemed to explain the curse that had befallen the city. "These carvings, they depict the city's history," Emily said, her voice filled with wonder. "Look, there's the city in its prime. And here are the gods." The carvings showed a great city, its people prosperous and powerful. But then, the images darkened. The city's leaders were shown performing forbidden rituals, invoking the wrath of the gods. The final scenes depicted the gods cursing the city, condemning its inhabitants to a fate of madness and suffering. "Here's the part about the curse," Michael said, tracing his fingers over the carvings. "It says the curse can only be lifted by performing a ritual of atonement." "What's involved in the ritual?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with both hope and fear. We examined the carvings closely, deciphering the ancient symbols and instructions. The ritual required a series of offerings and chants, similar to the one we had attempted before. But this time, there were additional steps, ones we had missed in our previous attempt. It required a great sacrifice, a willingness to confront the darkness within ourselves. "This is it," I said, my voice steady with determination. "This is our only chance to break the curse." "But it's dangerous," David said, his face pale. "If we make a mistake, we could make things worse." "We don't have a choice," Carlos said, his voice firm. "We need to do this, for all of us." As we prepared for the ritual, a sense of purpose and resolve settled over us. The fear and desperation that had plagued us were replaced by a determination to see this through. We gathered the necessary offerings and rehearsed the chants, making sure we understood each step of the ritual. That evening, as the sun set and the shadows lengthened, we made our way back to the hidden chamber. The air was thick with tension, but there was also a sense of hope. We had found the key to lifting the curse, and we were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The chamber was bathed in an eerie light as we began the ritual. The offerings were placed on the altar, and we chanted the ancient words, our voices blending into a harmonious chorus. The air seemed to vibrate with energy, and the oppressive force that had plagued us began to lift. At first, everything seemed to be going well. The carvings on the walls seemed to glow with an otherworldly light, and the air grew warmer. But then the ground beneath us began to tremble, and a low, rumbling sound filled the chamber. "Stay focused," Michael shouted, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Keep chanting." We continued the ritual, our voices rising above the noise. The tremors grew stronger, and the air grew thick with an oppressive force. It was as if the very walls of the chamber were closing in on us. But we pressed on, determined to see it through. As we reached the final steps of the ritual, the air grew still, and the tremors ceased. A sense of calm washed over us, and the oppressive force that had plagued us seemed to dissipate. The carvings on the walls glowed brightly, and the chamber was filled with a warm, comforting light. "It's working," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with awe. "The curse, it's lifting." But then, the light began to flicker, and the air grew cold. A shadowy figure appeared at the edge of the chamber, its presence filling us with a sense of dread. It was the embodiment of the curse, a malevolent force that had plagued the city for centuries. "We have to finish the ritual," I said, my voice shaking with fear. "It's our only chance." With renewed determination, we completed the final steps of the ritual. The shadowy figure seemed to grow weaker, its form flickering and fading. The light in the chamber grew brighter, and the oppressive force that had plagued us began to dissipate. As the ritual came to an end, the shadowy figure vanished, and the chamber was filled with a warm, comforting light. The carvings on the walls glowed brightly, and the air was filled with a sense of peace. "We did it," Michael said, his voice filled with relief. "The curse is lifted." We stood in awe, our hearts filled with hope and gratitude. The curse that had plagued the city for centuries had been lifted, and we had survived. The malevolent force that had threatened to destroy us was gone, and we were free. As we made our way back to camp, the sense of dread that had plagued us was replaced by a sense of triumph. We had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The lost city, with all its ancient secrets and malevolent force, had been conquered. The ritual was perilous, demanding every ounce of strength and resolve we had left. As we performed the ancient rites, the city seemed to come alive, its stone walls pulsating with an otherworldly energy. The ground trembled, and the air grew thick with an oppressive force. In the final moments, we faced the embodiment of the curse itself, a spectral figure born of the city's dark past. It was a battle of wills, a test of our determination to survive. In the end, the curse was lifted, but not without a heavy price. We emerged from the city forever changed, haunted by the memories of what we had endured and the secrets we had uncovered. As we gathered for what we hoped would be the final attempt to lift the curse, the atmosphere was charged with a mix of fear and determination. We had come so far, and the thought of failing now was unbearable. The ancient temple, where we had discovered the instructions for the ritual, was our last hope, and we knew that this confrontation would be our most challenging yet. "Everyone ready?" I asked, looking around at my team. Their faces were pale, etched with fatigue and fear, but their eyes burned with resolve. "Ready as we'll ever be," Michael replied, his voice steady. "Let's do this." We made our way to the heart of the city, where the ancient altar stood. The air grew colder as we approached, and an unsettling silence descended upon us. It felt as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting for the final act to unfold. We arranged the offerings on the altar and began the ritual. The chants we had practiced echoed through the stone chamber, our voices blending into a harmonious yet haunting melody. The carvings on the walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own, glowing with an eerie light. As we chanted, the ground beneath us began to tremble. The air grew thick with an oppressive force, pressing down on us from all sides. It was as if the very stones of the city were resisting our efforts, fighting to maintain their grip on the curse. "Keep going," Carlos shouted, his voice barely audible over the rumbling. "Don't stop." We pressed on, our voices rising above the noise. The tremors grew more intense, and the light from the carvings flickered and danced. The oppressive force seemed to grow stronger, and it took every ounce of our willpower to continue. Suddenly, a shadowy figure appeared at the edge of the chamber. It was the embodiment of the curse, a spectral presence that radiated malevolence. The figure moved towards us, its form shifting and flickering like a dark flame. "Stand your ground," I shouted, my heart pounding with fear. "We can't let it stop us." The figure moved closer, its presence filling the chamber with a sense of dread. It was as if the darkness itself had taken shape, a force of pure malice that sought to consume us. We continued the ritual, our voices trembling but unwavering. The figure reached the altar, and the air grew colder still. It raised a shadowy hand, and the light from the carvings dimmed. The oppressive force became almost unbearable, pressing down on us with a weight that threatened to crush our spirits. "Finish the ritual," Michael shouted, his voice strained. "We're almost there." With a final surge of determination, we completed the last steps of the ritual. The air seemed to crackle with energy, and the ground beneath us shook violently. The shadowy figure recoiled, its form flickering and fading. The light from the carvings grew brighter, and the oppressive force began to lift. The figure let out a haunting wail, a sound that seemed to pierce our very souls. It was a cry of defeat, a final act of defiance, before it vanished into the ether. As the figure disappeared, the tremor ceased, and the air grew warm once more. The oppressive force that had plagued us was gone, replaced by a sense of calm and peace. The carvings on the walls glowed brightly, and the chamber was filled with a warm, comforting light. "We did it," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with awe and relief. "The curse is lifted." We stood in silence, our hearts filled with a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. The battle had been won, but it had come at a great cost. We had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but we were forever changed by the experience. As we made our way back to camp, the sense of dread that had haunted us was replaced by a sense of triumph. We had conquered the malevolent force that had plagued the city, and we had survived. The lost city, with all its ancient secrets and dark past, had been freed from its curse. But the victory was bittersweet. We had lost friends along the way, and the memories of what we had endured would haunt us forever. The jungle, once a place of adventure, had become a place of nightmares. The ancient city's malevolent force had tested us in ways we could never have imagined, and we had emerged scarred but stronger. As we packed up our camp and prepared to leave, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. We had come to the lost city in search of knowledge and discovery, and we had found something far more profound. We had faced the darkness within ourselves and emerged victorious. The journey back to civilization was long and arduous, but it was filled with a sense of relief and accomplishment. We had survived the curse, and we were bringing back knowledge and artifacts that would change the way we understood the ancient world. As we emerged from the jungle, the world seemed brighter and more vibrant. The oppressive force that had haunted us was gone, and we were free. We had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, and the lost city had been freed from its curse. But the memories of what we had endured would stay with us forever. We had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, but the scars would always remain. The lost city, with all its ancient secrets and malevolent force, had changed us in ways we could never have imagined. We had conquered the curse, but we had paid a heavy price. The jungle, with its dense foliage and oppressive atmosphere, had become our prison. The ancient city's malevolent force had tested us in ways we could never have imagined, and we had emerged scarred but stronger. As we returned to civilization, we knew that we would never be the same. The lost city had changed us, and the memories of what we had endured would haunt us forever. But we had survived, and we had brought back knowledge and artifacts that would change the way we understood the ancient world. The lost city, with all its ancient secrets and malevolent force, had been conquered, We had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but the journey had left us forever changed. The memories of what we had endured would stay with us forever, a reminder of the price we had paid to lift the curse and escape the city's grasp.